Oh, can you hear my cat? Hello, Boo.
Just in time for the recording.
I know, what's he like? Being on DG, being in DG Life is not enough. He needs to be on Zooms and webinars as well. Where have you gone, Crafty?
I just said we were going to wait a couple of minutes.
I'll keep an eye in the waiting room if we get started. And
okay, you want to?
I'm going to put my mic off. If you need me, just get me on chat.
And just once I've done housekeeping, if you want to put the
sure
up, Tabby, that'll be wonderful. Thank you.
No problem.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to see you all. It's bonny and sunny here, which is always lightens the mood. So just a bit of housekeeping just now. You will all be on mute for whilst the present our guest speaker Barbara is giving a presentation, but we will unmute you again for the Q&A. That's just to cut down any extraneous noise. I also have 2 grandchildren here, so it will stop them bouncing into the proceedings. If you want to ask any questions, or you think of questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat facility during the presentation, and you can find that down at the bottom of your screen. You will have noticed we are being recorded. The webinar will be uploaded to our website to join our growing resource list on our Unlimited page. Introducing Tabby, my colleague, and just asking her and we'll give Barbara a bit more of an introduction in a few minutes, but if Tabby could just share the screen, and that will just prompt me with the brief introduction. Thank you very much. So, welcome to presenting your story, which is how to express your core values, history and aspirations. This is our 4th in our Investment Ready webinar series. My name's Maggie Broadley, for anyone who doesn't know me, and I'm DGU Programs Manager. You've already met Tabby Medallia, who's our creative producer. The Creatives Unlimited is a larger 1-year programme. We have 3 strands in that: growing leaders, growing ambition and growing visibility, and the Investment Ready webinars are part of our growing ambition stream. If you want to have further details, please check out our website. We are a charitable organisation, and we want to give special thanks to our funders, Big Lottery Scotland, through Creative Scotland, the Hollywood Trust, Dumfries and Galloway Council. Very important to us, and we are particularly grateful. We have had to think on our feet, as most of the world has done in terms of COVID, and we have originally intended all of this to be delivered face-to-face, but we've moved it online, and actually we think it's a way that will always become part of what we do now. It will never replace face-to-face, but it will be an important element of what we do. So, I have great pleasure in introducing Barbara Chalmers, and I have to read, what an intriguing intro she gave us, interested in culture, life, death, service design, being human, from Glasgow, based in Glasgow, Scotland, United Kingdom. However, Barbara is a local person. She's, originally from Port Patrick. She's far travelled. She has a very intriguing career path, starting from, as she says herself, working herself up with Scottish Arts Council as was, and now Creative Scotland. I am desperately keen to hear what she has to say, and just take it away, Barbara, please.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Maggie. Hello, folks. And I think Karen's there. I think we may know each other from Stirling days, but I can't see your picture there. So I'm just going to share my screen here, if this might work for us. I didn't want that version of it. I want it onto Here we go. Full screen. No, that's not quite doing what I want either. Sorry. It's funny that, because we had a little, tech, there we go, a wee tech check-in just before we started there. And of course, at that point, everything always works beautifully. And then as soon as you start to try and do something, it all changes. But so yes, we're here just to talk about how you express yourself and how you talk about your values and your story in the context of this sort of investment ready. Now it's not moving down, there we go. So, hello, I'm going to just take a wee bit at the start to introduce myself a wee bit more, and the things that I've done, not because I'm wanting to talk about me, but I think the context of it is just relevant to what we're looking at today. And I've tried to just like capture 30 years of my CV there on one slide to save the boring bit. I started off actually working at the BBC in London. My very first job was being the PA to the managing director of BBC Television, which mostly centred around topping up the drinks cabinet, I have to say, because it was a long time ago. Then went to the Scottish Arts Council and worked in the visual arts mostly, and worked into being their sort of head of information and PR at the time. Moved on to Edinburgh, so I had to put in a picture of Sean, and that's me with the black hair, you couldn't really tell, but that was when you got freedom of the city. So when I went to Edinburgh, it was very much with I'd been at the Arts Council for maybe about 8 years, I think, at that point. So I went to pick up the arts and economic development portfolio in the PR side at Edinburgh Council, because they were very, very clear that's what they were building the reputation of the city on. So it was a really interesting time. I was there again, maybe about 8 years overall, working in PR, and then I ran a design studio for them. And it was at the time when they were like launching Hogmanay and launching the Science Festival and Festival of the Environment, and I had responsibility for like the Usher Hall and the King's Theatre and the Assembly Rooms and their leisure venues as well. So there's lots going on. First Mela, all of that kind of stuff was happening then. And then on the right there, I have a picture of the Queen, because when I went from there to Stirling, I was the head of communications in Stirling, and I was there for about 10 years. And in that period, we went through the millennium, and we did this sort of modernising government agenda was what was on the go, and we also bid to become a city, and we did that. And so as part of all of that, there was a focus on the arts, so the toll booth was revamped and brought into life. Changing room galleries was set up, all that kind of stuff. And then I went from Stirling to Perth, where I worked with Gwilym, as you were mentioning there earlier on, at some point further down the line. But I went there at the point when it was, and so this is just the relevance about sort of story stuff, because I went there and it was Perth Theatre, which was a failing rep theatre about to lose its funding. And the job was to turn all of that around, reposition the organisation. We were building Perth Concert Hall. It was in construction at the time. It was a car park. So at that point, the story was mostly people complaining about the loss of car parking space in the city centre. And, we were developing this new offer and shifting the focus to be much more, doing a lot more outreach stuff. So I was there for maybe 4 years through its launch period. And at that point, actually, I moved to Glasgow for love, as one does. And I set up at that point on my own, and very marvellously got a contract with the Scottish Government, which lasted for just short of 2 years, I would say. Because at that point they were launching Curriculum for Excellence, so that was their sort of flagship policy. And so I worked with them in Learning and Teaching Scotland over that piece. So I was responsible for the communication strategy, because it was on its arse, to be honest. It had been launched, they'd been working on it, and it was a mess. And so, it was just kind of the job of working with parents and unions and kids and everybody to try and reposition that. So that's just a kind of range of the people that I worked with when I was, so that's like a 10-year period doing that consultancy work. I was on the board of the Arches and the board of the Social Care Ideas Factory and Kinning Park Complex, and I also did bits of work with all of them, some coaching work and some development work. Kinning Park was going for a capital project. I was an advisor to Creative Scotland's Music Committee at that point, did a Glow project, and then I worked in like business planning type stuff and a lot of change and transformational work with Aberdeen and Horsecross, Dundee, Mischief, Laban, McRobert. You know, it was all sort of repositioning or articulating what they were all about for them at that point in time. And did work with Culture Republic when they were launching EDI, when the diversity changes were coming in. And then the little cluster in the bottom right there, NHS, Cruise and Good Life, Good Death. This is my other strand in life. So this morning I was leading a funeral and this afternoon I'm doing this, and that's kind of typical of my work life because it's a kind of area of passion for me. Oh, that's just a Horsecross. That was the Glow Co-Create project. So it was the first one that we got off the ground when Glow was on the go. Although if anybody worked with that, that was a difficult project because the tech didn't quite support the ambitions, I think, on the creative side. But for that one, I'd pulled together a team of creatives and we developed a project with the council there. So this is my death stuff. And I've used this in today's talk just because it's something quite different, and I'm not sure what you all do, but to me it doesn't really matter what you do. And obviously when I worked in Edinburgh and in Stirling in the councils, I didn't just do the arts portfolio, it's what they'd taken me in to do, but I was working in housing and homelessness and roads and you know, everything. And you know, so what I'm talking about today applies, doesn't matter what you do. But this is, I launched a website. I began work on it in 2010 when I started my own consultancy business because I thought we just do death so badly in this country. And so I was just wanting to look at how we might do that differently. So I knew nothing about it, you know, and I launched a website. I did go on Dragon's Den. It was absolutely horrible. I don't recommend it. But the reason I did it was to get, you know, some attention because I had no marketing budget. And you know, throughout the time, you know, if the social media and hits on your website are plittering along here, it was like a huge spike. So, you know, I achieved what I wanted from it. And because I got in that space and started talking differently about death, you know, I've been all around running events and doing things on the back of that, and that's me. I got awards for it. So that's me with Pat Butcher in the top there. And then now, like, I do judging for the Scottish Funeral Awards. And so, you know, that's a whole kind of thing that I've developed. I also, in 2016, I put myself back to school because I've worked a lot in a change environment around service design and design innovation. And I just wanted to actually learn more of the fundamentals of that because my role was always in a communication context, but I wanted to actually do the bigger job of design and change. So I went and did a master's there. I got a distinction and I won 2 medals. And I was so chuffed with that because most of the kids on the course were like younger than my weans. So it was very satisfying indeed. And the bottom picture there, I was sent off to Aarhus as a sort of Scottish Government rep on the back of all that to join in with an international lab. So it was all a beautiful thing. And when I came out of that with my qualification in service design, I started doing a bit of work with Snook. I don't know if any of you know them, but they're Scotland's sort of leading design, service design agency. And we did some work with Macmillan back into that sort of death space. In the last 2 years, I've been working out in Paisley, and that's been like trying to work with them. When they didn't get their 2021 title, they did, however, put aside £100 million to spend in the cultural estate. So I've been their business development manager, overseeing cultural venues, and I took it to the point of specifying what those venues needed to achieve for us. So it's the Town Hall and the Arts Centre I was mostly working with, what they need to be able to deliver once the services get back in. So they're still on the go. And I'm currently, so I started back out doing some consultancy from August, and I've been working up with Aberdeen Performing Arts. So they're like everyone else, they're in that place where, you know, what is the future? Where are we all going? And they've been doing a very good job. So True North is their September festival, which they just ran very successfully with thousands of hits on the website. And Granite Noir's their spring book festival. And I'll just leave that there and come on to this. So the other things I do, as I say, death things. So I've got this website called Final Fling, and I have recently started another thing. So it's the kind of legacy of Final Fling. Final Fling's about advanced planning for end of life, and Only Human is about time of need. So like if somebody's just died, it's, you know, doing the funeral direct and the ceremony stuff. So I'll touch on that a wee bit as we're going on. And I also set up a charity for humanist ceremonies to try and help people. So at the moment we're offering free ceremonies for anybody who needs a funeral and thinks they can't afford it. And again, I'll mention these just because they're quite good examples of how you talk about things. So values is the sort of core bit of this that I wanted to look at. And I just wanted to really say, if you don't know what you stand for, I think you're a bit doomed. And I think that values thing to me is absolutely critical for the success of any organisation, whatever it is that you're doing. And I think quite often people get a little bit mixed up around mission and vision and values. And sometimes those terms can be used a bit interchangeably. You'll see them in different places. And what somebody calls a mission, somebody else calls a vision. I don't really care, and it doesn't really matter, as long as you know what it is you've called the thing, so that you can talk about it with other people. Because, yeah, I'll come to the next bit as well. But you know that, you know, to boldly go, we all know that. So I think when you're talking about these things to other people who don't do this stuff, it's just quite good to kind of frame it in that way, because they're like, all right, okay, I know what you're talking about. And I say this because I have a brother who worked for one of the bookmakers, you know, and they did some work around this, which he thought was utter nonsense. And a lot of people will think it's complete nonsense to care about values and to talk about that stuff. But I know that it's transformational. And so I think it's all about how you're able to present that and talk to people about it in ways that they can engage with it. So I think something like this I just find quite helpful as a way into it. And so mission stuff is, you know, what is it you're trying to do? So for many of us, it's like fill the venue with happy customers. And why are you doing it? Like, why do we get up every day, you know, to transform lives through great experiences? And then the values bit is that, you know, what is your signature style? What are your guiding principles? What's your flavour, your kind of personality, your way of being? And culture, really importantly, is like you either choose to manage your culture or it will be going feral, because you can't not do culture. You know, culture is what happens. It's everything that we do, everything that we say, every sign in the toilet, how you set up your kitchen sink area for your staff room, everything is about the culture of your organisation. So it's really important, I believe, to like manage that and be clear what it is you're trying to say. And one of the tools that you can use to do that is a code of conduct. So I'll just touch on that a wee bit. Oops, sorry, I've got the burling ball thing going on here. I don't know if you can see that. It's just moving on. There we go. Okay, no, it's doing something odd. Hang on. It's probably objecting because it's such a big fat file. It's I tend to do this thing. I remember when I was presenting for my masters for the final judgment, you know, and they're like, have 10 slides, and I was like, I've got 70. It's just how I do it, sorry. So yeah, I just thought I'd pop this one in because, again, you know, thinking about anybody who might be going from this to do some work around this with other people, that's another good way, like fire up some logos to have conversations around them, because we read values, whether or not you know what somebody's written down as their set of values, you know what they're saying about themselves, and you look at those different things, and you might have people who work in the same commercial space, but they're offering very different things, and you know who's like the cheap and cheerful, and who's the cheap and good quality stuff, and who's just cheap. You know, all of those things become really apparent to us. And I had to put Mr. Trump in there, because if you think about values, you know, it's like what a breath of fresh air to hear words like decency and respect being spoken from the podium after the toxic language that we've had to listen to for quite a long time. You know, so it's just like these things are all values, and people buy into those things. They buy into brands, and they're like kind of key. We'll see them also in things like in sport and arenas. And some of the words that are here, you will see these not just in sport, but all over the place: excellence and respect and friendship. And for me, the words often won't be unique, because these are things that we kind of commonly agree are good things. So it would be nice to think that you will find them commonly occurring, but the process of getting to them is the kind of important bit. And again, even in a commercial space, you'll get, you know, if you're talking about mission stuff, that's an old one, but you know, it's like Pepsi's entire mission was just beat Coke. And there's something that I like about that, which is also just about the simplicity of language and having very short, sharp things that people can understand what it is you're talking about. And if that's the kind of thing that you can get up in the morning and salute, good for you. I'm not sure I could for a sugary drink, but you know, if that's what works for you, that's great. And so I would say there's kind of three pillars to this for me. There's the engagement bit, there's the embodiment bit, and there's the ownership bit. And you need to work all of them. So for engage, in the past, I'll have done team workshops with people. I'll go in and do board workshops. We'll socialise and test ideas as they're developing. We listen to feedback. And then crucially, we share the results back to everybody. Because I think quite often you can get a kind of hit and run thing with these types of things, where somebody comes in and does a little bit of work with you on values and then they disappear and you never see them again. You've no idea what that was all about. The embodiment bit, you know, I think you need to see a kind of physical representation of what it is you're talking about if you're developing values and story about yourself. And so where I've gone in to do work with other people, we usually just produce a nice little concertina pocket-sized thing. You shove it in your pocket, in your handbag, your wallet, whatever. But it just captures key messages. Those kind of things really work well. Everything from the first point of contact, there should be consistency in the messaging. So if somebody's applying for a job with you, they should see it in the recruitment pack. It should be in the advert, you know, everything that you say right from the get-go, the selection process, the way you interview people, all of those things. Your policies, all of your policies should reflect what you're saying about yourself. How you do your performance appraisal, the training needs analysis, the design of the training itself, all of your collateral, business plan. And I've seen that as well in organisations, you know, do you have a vision, mission, values? Yes, we do. Where are they? And it's like they're in the business plan that's filed somewhere that nobody ever reads. Like that, there's just no point in that. I think that just is like a kind of tokenistic waste of time. It needs to be lived, it needs to be alive, and it needs to be everywhere. So all your kind of website and digital, your social, your print, everything should be reflecting that. And I think that word should be signals there, culture signals. So it is just that every sign, every meeting, how you greet people when you're coming together, every message, every moment is something to try and reinforce what you're saying. And then this really critical one, I have also done consultancy with people who are in a change process. And I would always say, like, the CEO needs to be there. They need to be there. They need to be standing in front of people and talking to them about their values and what, you know, why all of this matters. And I've also known other consultants who do this kind of work, who say, even though they've done this kind of work, they don't really think it changes anything and it doesn't really work, which I also do not agree with, because I've seen it transform organisations. And to me, that's all about this kind of process, the embodiment and the ownership thing, and getting all of that working, because it's hard work and you've got to like keep up the powerhouse, the life force behind it to make it work. So the ownership needs to be with the CEO and the board and the team. And that's the same if it's like one person and their dog in the organisation. The dog needs to know what you're talking about too. You know, it's just like it's got to be owned. And while I would normally craft and create the language with the team, it has to be owned by the CEO. It's not, you're not just letting other people loose in your organisation. So you're doing a kind of sandwichy job of like getting language from people and then making something that fits what it is that the CEO is really trying to do with the organisation. So final fling, I just thought it was useful to look at that a wee bit, because we're talking about death and we're talking about funerals, and a lot of people really struggle to do that. the starting point for me when I'm doing workshops with people and when I was doing this project for myself, you know, it's like looking at personal values. And what, you know, I was brought up on a farm in the southwest, and we were taught to like be out of the house mostly, to run on roofs and do dangerous things with a risk assessment policy in the back of your head. So it was like running the roofs, but running the bits where the bolts are, that kind of thing. Also encouraged to ask why, to have fun, to be human, and to have some integrity. Those are the kind of key things to me. So that's what I look for when I'm going on somewhere else. And that's what I wanted that site to be about. I wanted people to have great funerals. I wanted them to challenge why we do shitty things that we do. I wanted them to have fun and be able to express themselves with it and like be human and just find meaning in the rituals that we do quite poorly at the moment. So the brand values that I took from that are being spirited, creative and pragmatic. And so then you've got a kind of easy checklist when you're doing things. It's like, is this thing that I'm doing now, does that match against what I'm saying I'm trying to do? So it's even like the brand, you know, it's been a handcrafted thing. I did a lot of market testing around that. The colourful sort of coffin stuff, it's all just full of that spirit. And yeah, so marketplace, do your market research. I did a lot of competitor analysis. Like I say, I didn't know anything about this field. I just looked to see who was working in the field and how they behaved and what they were doing, what they were saying. And I tested my ideas. So like the name Final Fling, I knew that would be pretty Marmite for a lot of people. But when you look at other things, like there's a lot of this kind of dignity and golden fluffy clouds and leaves falling off trees and all that, because people don't want to say, you know, we're talking about death. You know, it's just, that's the space you're in. So I wanted to be really clear, like I'm talking about death, I'm going to use the death word. And so Final Fling just felt right to me. And the market research I did back that up. So I think it's really good to get feedback from people. There's two kind of critical bits then that I developed in my toolbox for that I think are, you know, work everywhere. So the tone of voice. So at the moment I'm doing some work with Aberdeen, and we're looking back. I did work with them a number of years ago on tone of voice, and we're back refreshing that now because these things can shift also. But the whole tone of voice, as I say, was very pragmatic and spirited for me. So I started the first death cafes in Scotland, so the top left and bottom right picture there. You know, it's just like you get people together, you create a safe space, you talk about death, dying and whatever else that's coming up for them. I wrote a little book. I went to the Cheltenham Literature Festival and ran a session there and ran some death cafes as well. And so I called it Too Busy to Die, because from market research, most people don't think they're going to die today and probably not tomorrow and probably not next week. So they're usually too busy to plan. So it's just like they're very kind of spirited and a bit cheeky. That's the kind of vibe. And the top right one there, that's like I do icebreaker things with people, and it's a flingo bingo worksheet. So it's like, what are the 20 documents you'll need when you die that your next of kin need? So like just making it about like a bingo model just makes it different. And also the wee bottom left one there that's a bit out of focus. You know, those things that you used to play with in the playground, it's like, who are you going to fall in love with or whatever. And it's just, of course, so the thing with that is whichever one you open up, whichever one you get, it just reminds you that you're going to die, which I just think is funny. It's just like all the time feeding back into people around, like it's a very practical, pragmatic thing. And I ran the Dead Festival as well in Glasgow. So that's the kind of tone of voice thing, like be sure and clear and consistent with that messaging. And then the look and feel's the other bit. And when I started with this, again, I had no money. I was just paying for this and making it up as I went along. And I hated all of the imagery that I saw anywhere in the world about death and dying, because it's all silver-haired people with white teeth who don't look like they're going to die soon. And nobody actually does want to see pictures. It's a very private thing, dying, and people don't tend to want to share pictures of themselves at that point in life, and people don't really want to look at those either. So I worked with a photographer that did a sort of image acquisition strategy piece of work around the look and feel, and decided just to go for ordinary people in their ordinary lives, you know, in their kind of happy and ordinary moments. So then we get this lovely, so people then give me images, so I've got content for that, and it's people who've died when they were like just having their great days when they were kids and when they were older and wherever they're at. And so that kind of energy has stayed with it. And the bottom right one there again is a death cafe, where it's like, it's bunting and it's cakes and it's coffee and it's chat, and they're busy and they're lively. And we specifically have held them in public places so that people can see that a death cafe isn't something weird, you know, it's just like normal life. So I think if you're going away from here to think about doing stuff like that, I would say, you know, start with people talking about their personal values. And for most people, they're formed in kind of formative year stuff. So it's like friends and family and groups and clubs and faith groups and who your role models are. Those are the things that influence it, and just like have conversations together. So if you're a one person operation, you know, just have the conversation with somebody else that you know, or a number of people, because it's just interesting stuff apart from anything else. And then you can flip chart these things or kind of join up ideas. And then if you're doing it with a group and you are a team, you know, it's just then kind of sharing and prioritising, and you always find commonality in these things, you know. You'll find different words and different emphasis, but there's always a kind of good base of commonality in them. And then you can take those personal values and discuss how they translate into your work and business environment, and, you know, just reinforce what's important to you is how we work together. And I think, you know, around 5 is good, because when you get beyond that, I mean, 3 is better, because you do want people to be able to remember things, or they become a little harder just to have meaning for them. So this stuff is when I worked in Horsecross in Perth, we did a whole exercise with the whole team. We did a massive, I mean, it was a massive culture change that we did there, really massive. And the mission was to create a buzz. So that, to create a buzz, was on the van that the tech guys drove around, and it was in post-its and posters, and, you know, it was everywhere. And also it was this kind of notion for people about raising ambition. It was in our venues in Perthshire, in Scotland, internationally, you know, that we're going to be reaching out, and then a kind of vision of how we're working. And the values there, so we would use HX as the kind of shorthand for Horsecross. It was the Horsecross way, so we had used that little acronym up the middle of that, and we had posters that people could see about what it was all about. So these were the phrases that they had used themselves in the workshops that people could all agree and sign up when they prioritised things. And I went through a similar process in Aberdeen when I went up there doing consultancy, not this time round, but a while ago. And because they have sparkling granite there, you know, it was about creating a spark. It was like a great word to be using. And then people know it's about bringing spark to the job. And the thing is, people start using this language when you're doing this with them. You start to have some kind of common language just for the organisation. And for this one, I loved like that curiosity is a fantastic word that's in there. Resilience, like really strong word. And other ones, obviously, they get teamwork. The other ones had work together. But again, we've got this kind of acronym SPARK, and it makes it easier for people to remember. We also had a jolly good laugh, because 2 letters to the right of SPARK, if you read down the way, it says tits. So that's just like great fun for everybody. And with those as well, we did go through this process of like just trying to break it down a little bit to what does it mean. You know, this is code of conduct stuff. If you want the right to information at work, you know, you've got a responsibility to fill in the blanks. So something like that's a really good tool, because when you do come to do like performance appraisal, you need to be able to kind of measure things, and these are really good performance management guidelines. Oh dear, sorry, this is obviously getting tired. I'll just flick this bit on. How's my time, Tabby? I know I'm okay. Come on.
You're fine for time, Barbara. Everything's okay.
Good. Yeah.
Are you okay there, or do you need a hand? That's fine.
No, it's fine. It's just loading up. There we go. So on to the kind of history, aspiration, goal bit of that messaging. You know, it is all about storytelling, and I think I talk about authentic voice because it is trying to know what, you know, if it's your business or your enterprise or your group or whatever, you know, what is your voice and who are you in this? Because I think, like, I've spent a lot of my life working in big organisations like Scottish Government or a council or whatever, and it's definitely not about my voice. That's when you're using passive tense all the time, like it was decided. Nobody's actually taken, you know, ownership of that. But when it's your thing, that's what I've loved about working for myself. Then I can say the things I want to say. And so it's like trying to make sure that that voice is in there. And you will also probably want to keep the stakeholder in mind. So, you know, you're thinking about who it is you're talking to, and what your the relationship is that you're trying to build. And also work with users if you can. And as I say, it's a great way, now that everybody's trying to burst the banks of social media all the time, you know, if you're looking for content, then if you can get users in a community, of a shared interest community, that really helps. And then it just keeps things really authentic. I was saying I was doing a funeral this morning, and I did a blog about that funeral with permission of the family to put out today. And it's just like, it's a beautiful picture, it's a beautiful story. And then it's not just like me and some kind of meaningless corporate speak talking about something that's not very interesting, you know, because people are interesting. And so it's like that, trying to get people and pictures and colour and interest, and is always aiming for the kind of did you know factor. So it's like, what is the thing at the end of today when you sit around to have your tea with your family? What might you say about, did you know that it's, you know, that's that bit. You're just trying to find little nuggets of interest, which might be like diving way back into your history or your recent history, just to pull out little bits of information. And I think, like, try and create a bank of those things so that they're easily accessed for all the kind of social media stuff you're doing. Then there's also a kind of keep it simple thing. You know, so say working with Scottish Government, when you're working with ministers, and you're having to brief them and they're running from one thing to another, it's got to be actually relatively simple. So you're giving them top lines, you know, it's like, what is this one thing? What are we talking about here? And then some key messages that kind of flesh that out underneath. And then there's also the thing of like the lift conversation, the kind of 1 minute pitch. And if you are like in this investment ready process, you never really know where your support might come from. You know, you could be having a coffee with a friend and you might meet somebody, you just don't know. And so I think it's really good to kind of rehearse what it is you want to say about yourself. And then keep it consistent, and you'll know probably that for most people, they need to see something like 7 times before they can kind of absorb it. And so, although it might feel boring and repetitive at your end, if you're sort of saying the same thing in different places, actually people need that because they need to be able to recognise and then sort of settle that message in. And so for social, it is quite good. Obviously, you want to be in conversations in social, but also there'll be a raft of stuff that you can plan and schedule in advance, like using Hootsuite or Later or whatever you're using. So, you know, you can set a day aside. I think personally, I just find it easier if you're doing it like that. Set some time aside so that you're just in messaging mode and you can just sit down and write a whole load of variations on a message, and then you've got them sitting ready to go on a quiet day. And then hashtag repeat. So it's just like, and the thing is, you just need to keep repeating these things so that people actually hear them from you. So just sort of examples of that, and taking final fling this time. You know, it's just like, what is it about? It's for people who like to be in control of life and death decisions. It's that kind of thing. So when somebody, you know, grabs you somewhere, you're having a networking, remember people, remember like having coffee with folk. When you get that chance just to be able to talk, what the things are you're going to say. So that's just, you know, some of the sort of key language that I would use to talk about it, because it's about knowing options, staying in charge, and living life to the full in the meantime, those kind of things. And then the charity that I'd mentioned that I set up, Quiet Revolution, same thing with that. So these kind of lines, then you know, you should also see them. You know, if you pick up the annual report, you should see them. If you go onto the website, you should see them. You know, we're changing the world one ceremony at a time. We're crafting ceremonies with human kindness at their heart. All those kind of things, just like make sure that you use them in different places, you know, the same language. And also, you know, it just saves you time, because there's no point in trying to make a different sentence every day. It just doesn't work. And so, again, with Quiet Revolution, we've just been doing some press work around this support for ceremonies. So it's about tackling funeral poverty. We're trying to combat the impact of COVID, and we're trying to broaden the reach of funerals. So for people like the family this morning, you've got 20 people, they've got family all over the world. You know, how can we help them get out to broader people? With the one-page plan, that's another good little discipline, a good exercise to do wherever you're at. And if you've been going through the process of getting the investment ready and you're looking at that, you know, these are the things that I would say. So that's the Final Fling's one-page plan. It does actually fit on a page. So it's what's your USP, what's your offer, what's your mission vision. That stuff always comes back through. What's the service that you're offering? What's the market that you're operating in? What's your business model? What's your IP status? And just worth mentioning, actually, on the kind of value of brand, the Final Fling is a free platform. So, you know, people have used it, hundreds of thousands of hits on the website, and tens of thousands of people have been in on that blog, and thousands of people have used it for their end of life plans, but it's free to them to use. And the way that I made money was I licensed, so that brand, Final Fling, the mark and the brand and the name, I licensed it internationally, and that brought me money in, and that's what kept the website going. So, you know, these things do have quite a significant role. So yeah, product status, so it's like, where are you at in your cycle at the moment? What kind of metrics have you got? And people will always now be looking to see how many people have you got on your website, how many hits have you got on social, all that kind of stuff. Do you have finance in place? Who the key people are? And, you know, so it's also, if it is just you, find yourself a little friendly group of an advisory group. That's what I did with Final Fling. So I just found people from different walks of life who brought different bits of expertise, who were very generous, and I think quite often people will be very generous with you, who will act as a kind of sounding board for you. So that can kind of strengthen what you're saying about yourself and who your contacts are. And then the 1 minute pitch. So as I say, I did go on Dragon's Day and I felt utterly sullied by the experience. However, you know, one of the good things in that is the discipline of having to deliver a 1 minute pitch. I don't think I'll ever be in a more stressful situation. And although I did not fall over and I did say everything that I wanted to say, I can't say I did it with any chutzpah. It was all I could do to get the words out of my mouth. But, you know, just like, again, mission and vision, what is the context, you know, what's the market that you're operating in, or what's happening in society that's changing things, what are the stats around in the world, you know, so say in funerals, 92% of people don't shop around for a funeral, and the average funeral costs about $4,500 at the moment. What's the problem? So like the funeral poverty is the problem, what is the solution, what you can bring to that, what's the addressable market? So it's also, you know, yes, so, you know, however many thousand people die in the UK every year, but if you're delivering funerals, you're not delivering to the whole of the UK, you're delivering to your little patch. So it's that kind of, what is the reality about your local market? How are you disrupting the marketplace? Because my goodness, nowadays everybody has to be a disruptor. Why me? Why us? Like, what do you bring to the party? Who cares about, you know? And traction, like, what have you got going for you? So, you know, when I was doing it, it's like I was 5-star rated as best new website, and, you know, won awards for this, that, just those kind of things that you can say about yourself. And the little picture on the bottom there is just like my 9 slides that capture that information. And it's just my way of doing it. But actually, for some reason, I like to make them quite ugly. They're not pretty. And I write on them because then, just like visual memory wise, in my state of stress, I can sort of remember things easier. And I do just like a rehearsing. And then it means that one day when you happen to step in a lift with somebody who might actually be able to help you, you can quite quickly access your key information. And then that's the kind of consistent message. And I also had little badges made up that I would give away to people that look quite pretty. And I had, I made a little "I'll do it my way" t-shirt, Day of the Dead stuff. So I think in the same way, if you're developing a brand or a message, put it in a t-shirt, wear it, why not? So I think that's my scuttle through messaging, expression, telling your story, and I hope that makes some sense to people and may have some bearing on what they're doing. And I think it's quite, it's quite broad, and but the principles pretty much apply to everybody, I would say. So,
thank you, Barbara. It was really good. If you could stop sharing your screen now, and then we can start the Q&A. Thank you.
Great.
Now, I know Maggie's got a question and I've got a question, but first of all, does any of our guests who are attending have a question for Barbara? You can go first, Maggie, because I'm not seeing
any observations. No?
Yes, or observations, anything you want to discuss.
Yeah. I mean, I love the authenticity and your own voice coming through, and also maybe a bit of advice, because some people might think it's kind of more business commercial, but it's not. It relates, as you've said, and maybe if someone is trying to put together a funding application, maybe relate it a bit to that.
Yeah, I suppose I think with all of these things, if you just take some time out to think about your story, write your story down, just go through that process of going here's top lines that I would want to definitely share. Here's the kind of fatter, fuller message that come underneath that. And just make sure that you've got those key bits of information about how you can make a difference in the marketplace, whatever the marketplace is, and what it is that you're trying to achieve. And I think if you just write all that stuff down and keep it somewhere, I keep copy folders that are just 100 words about this or 300 words about that, so that you can kind of stitch them together, because it is bloody tedious, doing application forms, and a lot of that is repeat stuff. And so there's no point in having to rethink that every time you do it. So I think trying to just think through that and prepare some of those key statements and keep them on file for yourself. And I guess also with that, if you're doing funding applications and you're not being successful with them, I think it's definitely worth going back and seeing if you can get into a conversation with somebody about what's going on there. Because, or go to a mentor in the field, somebody outside, just to check through, can you read this and is it making sense for you? Just to get feedback. Because I think the worst thing is just to witter away on your own and you've no idea how anything lands.
Just, have you had that one nugget from someone else that you still remember? I'm just...
A bit of feedback, you mean?
Yeah.
I can't think of anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I always take stuff back out, and I think that is the main thing. I was talking with somebody in Aberdeen last week about it, and she said that she had remembered me saying at one time, we could just sit down and write this. I pretty much know where it's going. You could just sit down and write it, but that is just so wrong, because it's entirely about the engagement process with people. Because all of us, you would think, as I say, with the Donald Trump stuff very fresh in our minds, most of us want things like decency and humanity and respect and whatever. So, that's mostly what you are going to be working with. But it's very rare that people get a chance in their day-to-day to sit and talk about these things, about what really matters to them. And it actually is really quite changing for people. So, yeah.
Brilliant. That's great. Thanks, Barbara.
Anyone want to add anything?
I'd be quite interested to know what brought people to this seminar today, the webinar, and what they're working with at the moment, just to...
Well, we can do a wee quick kind of round robin. So if I start at the top of my list, the first person would be Alison.
Hello. Sorry, I'm muted because I have really bad broadband here. And
I think people
so,
who say that are still in their bed. Just say.
well, I'll put my video back on for a second. And then
No,
we
no,
can
no,
see.
you don't, Alison, you don't have
Also,
to.
I don't care.
Honestly, you don't have to.
Hello. Yeah.
Hi.
So I work with choirs and singers, and I'm just I've transferred my work onto Zoom, and I'm launching a project next year that's a kind of choral thing, but it's going to be about community building online, and I'm just about to have a new website built, so I'm just just sort of checking in with where I am in my work life, coming into the last 10 years of my work life, and sort of thinking about what's important to me for this last 10 years, and maybe just tweaking my branding a little bit, and certainly changing my website a bit and stuff like that. So
Good.
Thank you, Alison. Carolyn.
Oh, hi.
Hi.
2 reasons. I set up a charity called Performance Collective Stranraer to bridge young people interested in theatre making into careers, because we don't have a formal route into that sort of career within Dumfries and Galloway. We're relatively effective in terms of brand and imaging, but we find it difficult recruiting because of not getting the message out. So I'm looking to how we get the message out beyond our immediate instant appeal.
I guess then what I would say is if you're trying to reach young people, sit down with young people.
Well, it's entirely run by young people. I'm the oldest. I'm the only person over 35 involved in the community. So and part of the problem is that right now young people have got so much on their plates, and they're not consistent in their social media communication techniques because they're not trained in it and it's not their primary interest. So we're just looking at how do we reach wider audiences in a totally new way, because digital is not our normal medium. We do real stuff with real people. The second thing is I run my own performance spoken word company called Buskers, and in that we've always kept a very low profile, and I'll probably still keep it that way because I'm more involved in developing very personal work, and to go very public early on in that process is alarming. So,
I mean, and also I think I do things my way. My partner teaches samba drumming, has done for 25 years. She's made a career for herself. She's never had a business card. She doesn't have a brand name. She's never done a bit of publicity in her entire life. She's worked with Jules Holland and the Pet Shop Boys, and so I think there are different ways of doing it, and it's just about really doing what fits for you. So yeah, that sounds good. And I think I was just going to say there, from doing the service design course, I do think the user stuff, I guess all my life in doing communications work, there's been a lot of, over the years, it's in consultation, or it's engagement, or it's sort of trends and how you're talking about it or how you frame it, but that kind of user working with people, and now it's all co-design, co-production, but it's just actually talking to people, and I think really just testing out with young people what works for them. It just does the job for you. Thanks, Carol. And say hello to Stranraer, as I'm not allowed to visit at the moment.
Amy.
Oh, hello.
Hi,
Let me try and get
hi.
my video on. Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I'm sitting all bundled up in a house with no heating at the moment.
Oh,
I
bless.
really enjoyed your chat, Barbara.
Good.
I don't know why I'm here. I guess I'm a student in art and design at Dumfries and Galloway College.
Great.
I also opened a gallery in Kirkcudbright last year in my home. But unfortunately, I did that at the same time as becoming a student and COVID putting us into lockdown. So business plans have been well and truly kind of just put on hold with that at the moment. I think I'm embracing, this is my first ever laptop, and I'm embracing the digital world in every which way possible.
Great.
To assist me in my studies. I'm keeping a very open mind about doing online pretty much all online for me actually, studies in a practical subject. And I guess I'm just kind of trying to absorb and sponge everything that's available to me, both locally with DGU Unlimited and with the Scottish Society of Artists. They're doing a wonderful personal development programme at the moment. So yeah, I just take lots of notes, and yes, I do refer back to them. And I thought your talk was very interesting.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
You never know. I love just listening in on webinars and stuff, because you just never know. You just pick a wee thing up here and another thing up somewhere else. Yeah, nice to see you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Julian. Hello,
Hi,
Julian.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Barbara, thanks ever so much for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I'm interested in what you were saying straight down the line, because I do a fair amount of consultancy work. But there is a project that I've been involved with, a personal project, which is I kind of stumbled on it 20 years ago, and I'm not going to try and explain it now, but it was to do with some a medieval design, and I was finding out how it was originally made, and by doing that, I somehow stumbled into a whole way of making. This is in terms of the arts that I'd never realized existed, and I am quite well educated in art history and so forth. Anyhow, I've had many other things to do in life, so 20 years have passed, and I've actually got this thing to a point where I would really like to both study it and present it properly.
Fabulous, sounds great.
And I'm in the middle of writing about it, because I think that, and in a sense, I've got a notion of a kind of study and presentation package, and it does make sense, but I'm still in the middle of writing it. But I know that within the next year or so, I'm going to have to present it in order to get funding, basically, because I need to create the time and context to do it properly. Otherwise, I'll never get it done. And so the reason, my reason for coming to this webinar is, as I've said, straight down the line, what you've been talking about, it interests me in all my other work, but it's also in the back of my mind for this project, which is really, I really care about.
Yeah, great.
And I think the only thing I would say is, if I could possibly come and visit you in about a year's time, that might be helpful.
Great. I'll meet you in Portpatrick.
Right, that's a deal.
I'll see you in the town.
Yeah, okay.
That sounds great.
It does sound great, and actually I'm sort of really excited and intrigued, and I think mostly, see if you care about the thing, half the job's done, because your passion and interest will just come through in it. And I think you can always tell when somebody finds the thing tedious and when they actually find it.
Thank you, Barbara. We'll meet sometime.
Thank you, Julian. And lovely Karen.
We were at Stirling at the same time.
We were. Stirling, yeah.
I thought that, yeah.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm
Aye.
good. No, when I saw your name, actually, I'm on the board, I'm currently on the board of DGU Unlimited. I'll be stepping off at the end of the month, but so when I saw your name coming through, I thought this is going to be interesting, and I'm interested to see where you were at and what you were doing now. But I suppose for the past 10 years, I've been director of a small grant giving charity locally in Dumfries and Galloway. We focus on young people, but a lot of that is arts and culture. So I suppose I'm looking for, I suppose it's fresh words and a fresh perspective to advise people, because I think you said writing funding applications is really quite tedious.
Yeah.
Reading funding applications is really quite tedious.
Yes, yeah.
And I need lots of them and tons of them. And it's trying to explain to people how to do it really quite interesting, in an interesting way. Getting your message across quickly, being exciting and making us excited about what you're excited about. So it's, and you find your language quite often, or how you're trying to advise people, just gets a bit dull and a bit boring. And if you're getting, as you're saying, if you're getting dull and boring yourself, then so it's just looking for different pointers.
I've got a
just
great
when we're
little
talking.
thing that I use. Sorry, Karen.
It's okay.
I was doing, as I said, I was doing Jackie Shearer's mum's funeral.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, that's sad to hear, yeah.
But I'd offered them, I've got a great structure for a thing called a metaphor poem that people might have come across. And so her sister did a poem for her mum today, and it was fantastic. And I think it's maybe even worth doing something like that that's a bit off beam, not really central to what you're doing, just to waken up your head a bit. Because you just invite people to do that thing of like, if you think of a time of day, what time of day was your mum? What sort of food was she? What sort of, all that kind of stuff. And so this thing was so alive. It was like fireworks. Her mum was the 11th hour, that kind of thing. It's just fantastic. So I think probably there's all loads of good writing books out there, just to get some new ideas into your thinking. Even just before you start writing the funding application, do something like that that's just a wee bit refreshing for your brain, because I totally agree with you. It can just be like, for everybody.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you're frightened you're missing something good, that you're not funding something that could be really good just because someone's maybe not articulating it particularly well or getting the key messages. So
maybe it
it's
could be
just
good for
trying to say,
maybe the funders could ask questions like that. If you were a TV programme, what would you be, and so on. So that
off the wall.
Line, yeah. Or do it in video.
Visual is always the best. Visual.
Yeah.
Well, brilliant. Thank you so much, Barbara, and everyone else as well for your contributions at the end. Really fascinating. Some of those words were waking you up. Well done. We are delighted that this is going to be an ongoing resource. You have been a fantastic speaker, really full of impact, very difficult. I think you did pretty damn good whittling it down to the number of slides that you did with your level of skills and expertise and humanity. And you come across as a warm, caring and very astute person, and it's great to have had you as part of the programme. Thank you to my wonderful colleague Tabby, who keeps me right an awful lot of the time, and is another warm and giving human being. Thank you all for coming. We plan to continue with the series funding willing, so we'll get our thinking hats on into how we can make our applications even more exciting than they were already. So thank you everyone, have a lovely rest of the afternoon, and you will be sent a feedback form, very brief, so please do complete it. And any suggestions,
you have to come up with some interesting words.
Yeah. The DGU team included. So thank you all again, and see you soon.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks a lot. Cheers. Bye.